Gig Gab, episode 471 for Monday, March 3rd, World Hearing Day, 2025. Greetings, folks, and welcome to Gig Gab, the show by, for, and about working musicians. Our sponsor today is factormeals.com/FactorPodcast, where you can get 50% off using code FactorPodcast. It's all linked in the show notes. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. For now, here in Durham, New Hampshire, I'm Dave Hamilton, and
here in Napomo, California, back from the dead, it's Paul Kent.
Oh, yes, it is. Woohoo! Thanks for doing this, man. I'm so glad to do this together again.
It's been a long time, Dave.
It's been a year and a week. We are because we recorded the 9th anniversary of Gig Gab together on the 9th anniversary and then released it immediately. We're recording this on the 26th. It comes out on the 3rd. And that means that a week ago today, happy 10 years from the day we started Gig Gab, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. Is Gig Gab the OG? Was there anybody else doing this when we started?
Oh, I don't know.
For those of you
who don't know, for those of you who are new to the show as of the last year, Paul and I started Gig Gab together 10 years ago. It was Paul's idea. He called me up and said, I have this idea for a podcast, and the rest is history. So it's nice to have you back, man.
When we were talking about getting this thing launched, I don't remember that there was any other reference. I mean, there were other online groups, but there certainly wasn't a podcast.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
We certainly didn't have, you're right, when we were putting it together, we didn't say, oh, I like what they're doing, but I think we could do a different angle on it. There was none of that discussion because it was the thing we wanted to listen to on the way home from gigs. And it didn't exist.
The best part of the story to me was that, and we used to explain this all the time, that what Gig Gab was actually a phone call between two friends for several years before that. I mean, Dave lives in the East Coast, I live in the West Coast. We had a work, crossover of our life where we would see each other a week or two out of the year. But we were both musicians and we formed a band in this work crossover life that we had. But we would all talk to each other by phone, just check in as buddies and just, say what was going on. And that's what became Gig Gab, life playing in a band. That's
it. Totally. Yeah. We would call each other and vent. And some of that stuff could make it to Gig Gab. Some of it had to happen pre-show or post-show, but
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Today's pre-show being no different.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how is gig life? What gigs have you done, or what gigs are you prepping for? What's up, man?
Well, I'll catch up. So, remember, I stepped away from Gig Gab because I had a pretty demanding day job. Again, unexpectedly, I went into a new day job, and so I stepped away from Gig Gab. I stopped that September of this past year.
Got it.
And now I'm kind of considering myself kind of a full-time musician again. So between the two places where I live and having various incarnations of bands and playing solo shows, I actually already have, it's end of February. I have about 120 gigs on the books for next year. So I got a really busy year. Pretty much 3 weekends out of the year. I keep one weekend for family stuff, but 3 weekends of the year. Some combination of Wednesday through Sundays. It's rarely all 5 days, but
sure,
but some combination. And so I have, when I'm down here in Napomo, I have my solo work and I have a small band that I play with. When I'm up in the Bay Area, I have my solo work. I have a small band I play with, and I have a big band that I've been with for 26 years, the House Rockers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the booking all three of those things in two geographies is, one of the things that, makes it feasible to book that amount of work and still draw a crowd, which is like this common denominator to many of the things we are all doing now, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
The House Rockers play a little less than it did in its heyday. We'll play about 30, 35 gigs this year.
Okay.
Yeah. And most of those between May and September. We're just playing once a month in the wintertime. We just played, and in the wintertime we do club dates, and in the summertime we do outdoor dates. We just played, really satisfactorily a club date, sold it out.
Nice.
And actually, that's a good one for us to start with. So
Great.
I actually want to tell this story. If you don't mind me just keep on going.
Dude, you're here. Yeah.
All right. We walked in. So doors at 7.
Right.
Band was supposed to hit at 8. 5:30 was the call for sound check. Really nice club. Probably one of the nicest clubs for this type of music. Kind of a balcony and nice stage, nice house sound, and
almost theater-ish. It sounds like. Ish.
Yeah. There's a second level where people are looking down over the band and over the dance floor. So capacity is about.
Is that the club I played at with you for your birthday years ago? That's how I would describe that place too. But
No. This is another place called Club Fox in Redwood City.
Oh, okay, got it. Sure. Yeah.
Beautiful club, absolutely great club. All right. So we get there at 5:30. Our advanced guy, Bill, legendary Bill, got there fairly earlier, and the house sound person was someone who knew us, right?
Okay, even better.
And we got there, and there was a problem with the routing. We're all 10 guys are on in-ears now, right?
Okay.
All 10 guys. And so there was a problem with the routing and understanding how to unroute and reroute basically a Behringer board, the same as the Midas board, right?
Yeah, those... I love I call them the X32 series, but I should say the Star 32 series, because the Star could be an X, it could be an M, whatever.
Right.
But they're great. But you can route yourself into oblivion very easily, even if you know what you're doing. Like those things can be a mess. Yeah.
So the band gets there, and Bill's like, "We're not there," And usually when the band walks in, it's ready. We walk in, we sound check, we're done, right? Bill's setting expectations. We're not there. We're trying to figure it out.
It happens.
5:30, right? Now it's getting to about 6:15. And, the band's been standing around, which as a band leader, I'm very keenly aware that bad things happen when the band is getting restless and, a little cranky about just having to wait around.
Maybe the bar's open, things flow a little too easily.
Luckily not.
Okay.
We have
I've been in those situations.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
We actually had a bass player fall over on stage one time years ago, because the bar was open in a long break between sound check and downbeat. So anyway, now it's getting time. Doors were supposed to open at 7. They had actually exasperation on the house sound and Bill. They called the guy who owned the board, kind of escalated the trouble ticket. He comes in with another engineer, and we thought it was done, but then they left and it wasn't done.
Okay.
And time goes on, and it's like 7:15, 7:20 now. Doors were supposed to be open. They're not open. I say, Bill, we've done without a sound check in the past. I'm going to let the guys go get dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So tell the guys, go grab dinner, be side stage 5 minutes to 8 when we're supposed to have downbeat. So 5 minutes to 8, everybody's there. Doors are open, full house. Bill's like, not there yet. And some of the guys in the band take the stage, start tuning, start getting ready, right?
That's okay to do, except for when it's 5 minutes to downbeat and everybody's expecting a downbeat.
Yeah. And I said, Bill said, I think we'll be about 8:05, 8:10. And then guys started getting on stage. Everyone started getting antsy. The whole band is on stage now. Now it's 40 minutes. It's 8:40.
Oh.
And the weird problems, like one guy had perfect ears. I had ears, and then they did something, and then my ears went away, and it was going downhill. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, I do. Unfortunately,
yeah.
Yes.
You fix one thing, and something else, goes to hell. Finally, Bill, the hero that he is, says, "I'm throwing wedges on stage. We can't wait any longer." He goes grab some wedges. They again, no real mix, basically just vocals, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
you've now moved from perfection to survival. Yes.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And the audience was No one left, I don't think. They got a little restless.
Of course.
But good level of anticipation, kind of, going on. We sang happy birthday to someone, as we were waiting. I made a couple announcements about, future shows, and, we did the best we could in and I have never in 26 years in this band been in that situation on stage with my thumb up my butt, hoping for something to happen. And we were then stuck because I said, Bill, I'm going to take the band off stage. He was like, you do what you got to do.
It's a you thing. Yeah.
But we were kind of stuck. And then, but it was at any minute. And if we go off stage, well, then people leave. And so it was all, so, I'd love your thoughts on that. But anyway, here's the end of the story. We start 40 minutes late with 2 wedges on stage. Horns had nothing. And the band killed. I mean, it was like a legendary night where like Shared Crisis brings a band together. I mean, we hit hard. The dance floor was full from the beginning. Joy was throughout the room, and the crowd was totally into it. And it was just old style. You just are, you're just listening to what's on stage. And the band did great, and it was a great night. And like I said, we sold it out. And I got a couple nice notes after. Oh boy, whatever you guys were figuring out, you sure figured it out, because that was a great show. I mean, that type of stuff. So anyway, so to you, would you have taken the band off stage in that as I described it?
Think I would have kept the band from going on stage because I agree with you. Once you put, if it's 30 minutes to downbeat or even 15 minutes to downbeat, like the advertised downbeat that the crowd knows about, like they know 8 p.m. Whether in your mind it was going to be 8:15, like all week, whatever. That the ticket time, everybody's been told 8 p.m. If it's anywhere within certainly 5 minutes, maybe even 10 minutes of that, you don't go. Once you go on stage, you are staying there. It is the general rule. Obviously, there's exceptions.
Yeah.
But certainly, if one person needs to go, like, oh, shoot, I forgot my thing. I got to go turn. Like, if I don't set this right, it's going to take me an extra 3 minutes. You send that one person, and they go, and they're very quick about it, and they scurry off, and they act like a roadie. Right. And then that can be fine. But once you put the whole band on stage, you don't take them off unless there's a massive amount of communication with the crowd and you're level setting. And I mean, certainly if it's outdoors and there's a weather issue, that's a whole different thing. But, that's risky.
Tons and tons of lessons from this. I mean, the sound crew was doing the best they could, but they were getting super frustrated. And I was trying to get some communication from them, set expectations for the band, and that created more tension. But in the end, everybody was pretty good about it. And it is a spectacular club, but it all just came down to, we came in all in ears. The routing was set for their 8 front of house sound speakers that are around this beautiful, beautiful, spectacular club, and we just couldn't get it rerouted, and it was making everybody crazy. And so I have 2 things to say. Two different topics, completely different topics. The first is those nights where somehow you aren't just in a shared crisis with the band, but you're also in a shared crisis with the crowd. Like, it sounds like you made it such that you were all in this together, and the crowd was basically on your side, rooting for you to get it going so that you could get going, right? They weren't upset with you. They were, like I said, rooting for you. Those nights where everybody has a shared crisis, and it can be this kind of sound thing, it can be a snowstorm, whatever it is, I have found are often some of the most epic gigs I've played. Well, because everybody's in it together. It's not unlike the vibe at a stadium concert or an arena concert, an A-level touring band concert, where people have been planning this for months. They're stoked to be there. They're stoked to, like, the people that are next to them that they don't know, they still wind up talking to them because you're all excited for the same thing. And my guess is some of that happened in this scenario for you too. I would say the tactic that facilitated that, which wasn't planned, but luckily, no one on stage was acting anxious. And I made it a definite point before we actually started to have everybody thank the sound crew for doing their best to get us going.
See, that's it. And you then, by doing those kinds of things, you made it so that you were welcoming on stage, like you welcoming to the crowd. You weren't, like you said, nobody was antsy, or at least nobody was visibly agitated,
right?
Because that pushes people away for obvious reasons. And then, like you said, we're all gonna cheer on the sound crew for doing this for all of us.
Yeah.
And now suddenly, there you are. It's one, and that there's value in that, man. Yeah,
that was the lesson. So communication while things aren't going well. I talked to Bill and I said, what I think between you and I is, how do we talk about this when we're having a day like this? How do we, we never have had a day like this, but if we're going to have a day like this, what do we need to expect from each other? I'll get out of your way and let you solve your problems.
Sure.
I need a little information to tell the band, so they're not just sitting around wondering, where we are.
It's just communication. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And then
the other thing that we've had some conversations in the past year on the show about is, with your band, with all 10 of you, 10 people on in-ears, it seems to me that would be a recipe for a repeat of what you saw, or of some version of a repeat of what you saw, perhaps more frequently than not, if you're running into a place where they've already got a sound system. And so my thoughts on that, and you and I haven't talked on the show about Casual Gravity because it's a band that I joined since we last did an episode together. We've talked a little bit about it, but I've been talking about doing this with our band, and we're only 4 people, is bringing your own in-ears mixer and running a split snake. Yeah. And, Seismic Audio, man, has their split snakes that are like a 16-channel split snake, which I don't know is enough for you, but it's like less than $300. And so to me, being able to, and then for anybody that doesn't understand what this is you'd bring your own mixer and you bring a split snake. And what the split snake does is it takes all of the inputs. Let's say there's a microphone, right? There's a vocal microphone. Normally you'd plug that right into the mixer. Instead, you plug it into the split snake, and that splits it so that you can plug one end into your mixer and one end into theirs. And that way you set your own gains. Yeah. It doesn't matter what they set for front of house. You're just giving them feeds, and they can do whatever the heck they want with it. And your in-ears mix is exactly the same as it was at the end of the last gig you just played.
No, absolutely, Dave. And that actually is probably the biggest lesson, is that, we need to control our destiny with a band this big. We thought we were somewhat covered because the in-house sound person has worked with us before.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Of course. Yeah. And you probably, that's a realistic expectation. Like, obviously sometimes things go haywire, and here we are. But it, like, with all the festivals and things that you guys do every summer, and that, all those town square gigs, or really anywhere, you got 10 monitor mixes.
Yeah.
Way better to set that ahead of time.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Bill's great about that. Again, even when we do these big festivals, Bill will advance it with the sound team. Say, hey, we'll bring our stage sound, or here's what I need for us to, do stage sound from you. And a lot of times they have a split snake.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of lessons, but a good end to the story, which is kind of the cool thing.
Yeah. All right, folks, our motto here, always be performing, but you can't perform if you're running on gas station snacks and hope. And that's where our sponsor, Factor, comes in. Their chef-made, dietitian-approved meals arrive fresh and fully prepared. Just heat and eat in 2 minutes. Faster than it takes for your guitarist to take a solo he swore would only last 12 bars. Last week, I had their Tuscan pork chop with this cauliflower rice, and it was delicious. It was filling. And it was way healthier than my usual post-gig, like, let me cook nachos and throw everything on them kind of thing. With 40 weekly options, keto, calorie smart, protein plus, you'll stay fueled no matter how packed your schedule is. They've even got smoothies and snacks for those mid-rehearsal hunger pangs. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/FactorPodcast and then use code FactorPodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FactorPodcast at factormeals.com/FactorPodcast, all linked in the show notes, of course, to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. And our thanks to Factor for sponsoring this episode.
I've had that Tuscan pork chop before. It's very good.
Isn't that delicious?
It really is.
It's really something. Yeah. I wanted to talk about canceling gigs because my last two Casual Gravity gigs wound up getting canceled. Now, the second one was not. We were not the ones that canceled it. It was the club that canceled about 24 hours before. There was a huge snowstorm coming into New England, and they made the decision. We don't want to stay late. The storm was coming on Saturday night, right? And the gig was Saturday night, so it would have been snowing kind of maybe while we got there, but certainly, getting heavy throughout the night. And they decided they wanted to be able to let their staff go as early as they wanted, and they didn't want to have a band on the hook and all that stuff. So fine. We were bummed about it because it was the second Saturday in a row where we had a canceled gig. And there was a snowstorm the previous week. We had like 3 weeks here where we had Thursday, Saturday snowstorms. It was really fun. It cost us a fortune in plowing fees, but that's a whole other thing. The first one was a gig that we were sort of hesitant about in advance. It was the Saturday before the Super Bowl, which is never, in our opinion, never a great night for a club. This was our first night playing at a club that this band has never played at before and has wanted to get into, and I think would be a good club for this band. And we have like 4 or 5 dates booked throughout the year at this club, but this was the first one. And when they gave it to us, I was like, okay, well, they gave us the night before the Super Bowl. It's a soft night. They like none of their regular bands probably wanted it. It was open. We get it. I totally in. 3 or 4 days before, we're looking. It's like, okay, there's going to be a big snowstorm that night and night before the Super Bowl. Okay, like I think we should reach out to the club in advance, like maybe on Friday, and just ask them, like, look, big snowstorm coming. Night before the Super Bowl, you sure you want to do this? Like, give them the opportunity to cancel it. They did not. This was Friday. They were like, nope, we want to do it. We're like, okay. We had a semi-bad experience with a snowstorm gig back in December, so we're in the process of defining the band's snow policy, and I highly recommend you do this for your band. So it's still morphing, but it's coming into vision. It's like, okay. And even this one, the way the storm looked, it was like it probably wouldn't have hit the snow policy that we're like about to codify here. So I was like, whatever, fine, we'll do it. That Saturday morning, our guitar player texts us, and he's like, just by the way, I'm not going to be able to sing any harmonies tonight. I can't even open my mouth without coughing, going into like a coughing spasm fit. I'm like, okay, fine. He's not our primary harmony singer. Like, there's certain things we'll have to navigate around, but all in all, that's not the worst thing. It's like, do you really want to go do 3.5 hours? Like, how are you feeling? I'm fine. I'll push through. Okay, fine. 2 hours later, our guitar player, our lead vocalist, says, "Hey, how are you feeling, Jeff? I've been coughing like crazy too." They had gone to a concert like that Thursday night or something, and it turns out everybody that went with them got really sick. There's the flu, all this crazy stuff's going around, so it's no great surprise.
Yeah.
And our singer is like, yeah, he's like, I can't like talk or sing really without coughing, but I'll find a way to make it through the gig. And it's like, this is now noon. We have probably a 6 p.m. Load in for an 8:30 gig. It's like, okay, so it's like we got to make a call here. And we're texting back and forth, and I asked the guys, I'm like, look, objectively, this sounds like a really bad idea to do this gig. This is our first time in this club, and our lead singer, who is our front man, like the show is him. I don't mean to take anything away from the rest of us, but he's the focal point of the show. It's visually and sonically, like that's how this band works. A lot of bands work that way. And like, do we really want to go and like lay an egg on this stage for our first gig there? So, I hate to cancel it, And so I called Tom, our singer, and I was like, all right, what's like, And I just wanted to hear his voice. And as soon as I heard him answer the phone and start coughing like crazy, I was like, okay, like there's no way we can do this. And he's like, I wish the club had canceled. And this is something he would never, ever say. Like I've never heard him wish for a cancellation, not even under the worst circumstances. I was like, okay, well, that's a flag right there. Like, dude, we got to do this. And we did. We wound up canceling. It wasn't until about 2:30 in the afternoon that we finally made the decision and called the club. And I don't like canceling that late. And the club was like, why didn't you tell us at 9 o'clock this morning? And it's like, well, we thought we could push through. And then it turns out that, there were a couple of other factors. I don't want to share people's health information, but, it was like, it was obvious that it would not be good for us to be in this club, and they were understanding of that, but they were
not happy.
Unhappy.
Yeah.
And we tried to help them find a replacement band because they're like, we're definitely going to be open tonight and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, well, this is good to know. Like, and even the next week with the big snowstorm, that particular club put out a thing. They're like, snow be damned, come on out. And again, like I said before, some of those snowstorm gigs that I've played have been epic because people are like, well, we made it. Let's party. So we had these two gigs in a row that were canceled. Both understandably. One, I'm not sure we handled right. We probably should have made that call earlier in the day. But it was hard to know, especially because Tom's symptoms just got he was fine when he woke up, and then it just went south fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, unavoidable, but I can't remember the last time. Actually, I can remember the last time that we or the band I was in was the one to cancel a gig, and it was I had either a broken wrist or a very, very, very badly sprained wrist in a cast. And so it's like, well, and they were like, oh, you can just come and play acoustic and it'll be fine. I'm like, I don't, it's not going to use this hand. I want to play in 10 years. I don't want to do this today.
Yeah. Cancellations are hard. I mean, there's a couple things. If you live in a weather-challenged area or are going through a weather-challenged time, maybe it's part of the booking conversation when you start, right?
Yep.
And again, this gets into that squishy area where if the club says we reserve the right to cancel a gig up to 2 hours before the gig, do you accept that? And knowing very well that many bands will, and the same bands are willing to play for nothing, and we get back into that semi-professional conversation. But I guess I don't think you create policy based upon that the guy went from 0 to 50 sick in a span of a couple hours. That's a one-off weird thing.
It's a one-off thing. Correct. Oh no, I wouldn't create policy over that at all. But but it sucked that we were in that position.
And that's what one-off do. One-off suck, right? Because it's hard to plan. The only thing you can do is like someone in your band has a good idea who the circle of bands you would say, oh, you're not, who to call right away. Like, sounds like you guys tried to help find a thing. But, shit happens. Stuff happens. But it's not. And when it's your first gig at a new club, that's a really unfortunate thing. But, so there's two parts of it. One is, like, who's financially responsible in a cancellation? What is both parties' cancellation policy? What is the band, and what is right? Yeah, and what is the process when weird stuff happens? That you have to deal with. And I think the best that you can do is be prepared to come with a solution, right? Someone gets in a car accident on the way to a gig, or a million other things, or during the day of a gig or something. I mean, stuff can happen. We don't spend a lot of time thinking about how to solve the one-offs because we've got a million other problems to solve.
And the one-offs are. We could sit here and it's arguable that we did sit here for 9 years coming up with, often coming up with like, all right, well, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in that situation? And it's fine and fun, but you're even though you and I did this like clockwork for 9 years, we never came up with what would you do if, from the course of from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., somebody got super sick and like couldn't do the gig. you don't think to have that conversation because it's rare that it happens.
Yeah. But cancellations do happen. I mean, it makes sense. It seems like as I, listen to Gig Gab and watch threads on social media that cover bands, some areas are more contractual than other areas. Like some club dates are contracted dates, and some club dates in some areas are just handshakes, and so there's different types of things. I mean, I think again we have. I'll give you an example. We have the rainy season in Northern California is kind of January to April, and there's one venue that books entertainment January to April, and they will just cancel things the day of if it's going to rain. Sometimes they'll cancel it the Thursday before if it's supposed to be a rainy weekend. That's pretty humane. But there's never been any conversation about compensation if they cancel the day up, right? And I know what the conversation would be. Well, this is the deal, and if you don't want it, someone else will take it, which is often the deal in many areas of trying to book them.
Using one of your favorite words, leverage. Who has the leverage in this conversation?
Yeah, for sure. And, you just kind of come to expect that, and you set the band's expectation. But again, for those guys who all gigs are part of their income equation, that's not really cool, right? So they could have booked an indoor, restaurant gig and, made some money and that type of thing. So I think all of this conversation of cancellation goes back to the concept of leverage, goes back to the conversation about clarity in your agreement with people. And
the clarity.
You're in New England. It's going to snow in the winter, right? So it makes sense to know, right?
Yep. And it's going to rain in the summer too. Like, we've had plenty of gigs rained out, and the ones that I like the best are the ones, and I give our friend Paul Costley, who came on the show years ago, his booking agency. In fact, I don't know if he sold it or what the financial ownership arrangement is, but he no longer runs his booking agent, Notso Costley Productions. He has handed that off to a guy named Dimitri. And in fact, this gig was booked through Dimitri with Notso Costley. And again, he was, he jumped right on it with us. And I think he appreciated us, working with him and all that stuff.
Sure.
But what they do for the outdoor gigs in the summer, where it's far more likely that weather could be an issue, is they communicate, they work with the venue and communicate a very clear policy. There's a place we play in Portsmouth, New Hampshire called the Gaslight. And I think the deal is on the day of a gig, they have up until, if it's a 7 p.m. downbeat, they have up until 3 p.m., unless otherwise arranged, if somebody's coming from farther away, up until 3 p.m. So essentially, before you even pack your stuff in the car, they have the right to cancel the evening due to weather. It's very clear. It's not like, they can willy-nilly cancel, but if there's rain predicted, we reserve the right up to 3 p.m. to just pull the plug, and we owe you nothing. But this going in.
Yep.
And then if it's between 3 p.m. and when you put your first piece of gear on stage, right? So you arrive and you check in with the club before you start loading in. And again, very clearly communicated. If it's in that second window, it's 50%. So if 3 p.m. passes and nobody cancels, you're at 50%. And then if they tell you, yes, start loading in, put your stuff, we're good, then it's 100%, even if you never get to play a note because the heavens open up before you get to sound check or whatever. But that's, that months before that you sign off on that, and it's great.
That's pro. Paul Costley was a great guest. I mean,
I agree.
In terms of a booker who really, there are bookers who the club is their client, technically, who's paying, and they don't think about, the implications to the band, right?
Right.
But Costley was a great guest, super insightful, and clearly this story, they get it.
They totally get it. Oh, yeah. Because Paul does it. Like, Paul has, like I said, detached from the booking aspect of it, or at least being the face of it and the primary booking person. But he's still out there playing gigs.
Yeah.
So, and he always was out there playing gigs. So, he experienced, all facets of it. I don't want to say both sides because it's really a multifaceted thing. It's not just two sides. It's the club, it's Paul, it's the musicians, it's the crowds. It's everybody's got to have a good night for it to be successful. So
right,
yeah,
which is actually the same philosophy you'd like to transfer over to the promotion of gigs, right? Like everybody needs to be a part of that for it to be successful. A longer another conversation, but
yes,
but what you bring up is that success in the club, event music industry is truly not on one or the other. If everybody wants to do well, it really has to be. And there are good formulas for what everybody should be doing, right?
Yes, I agree. I was very surprised to hear Torrey Smith from Black Box Prompter. He was on a month and a half, 2 months ago, talk about his Facebook marketing and how well that works for his gigs. And it really is the general gist, and he goes through it. I'll put a link in the show notes if anybody wants to go back and listen. That was sort of the first segment we did, the Black Box Prompter, which is his product, was much later in the episode. The general gist is anybody that fails at this probably hasn't failed enough at it. Well, because it's marketing, you've got to test and fail and learn and adjust, and just like any other kind of marketing, you can't just throw it out there and expect it to work. You need to learn how to do this, and he gave some very specific lessons on what to do. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Mike Schulte, I know you have Mike co-host with you several times, and Mike is still one of my absolute favorite cover musicians to listen to, because he's got great perspectives. He's super smart, super humble. I just adore the way that he brings his knowledge,
Same.
And shares. Yeah. Anyway, Mike posted something about marketing on one of the online things about, did your band have everybody, in the band post something, like he did. And I said, well, wait a second. If your band plays, 2 or 3 times a week, at some point in time, carpetbagging marketing is not necessary. Right? There's different approaches to different things that the marketing do. And to bring this all back, there is a value to the relationship. So I'll give you a good example. This Club Fox that I started talking about earlier today. They're just super pros. They've got their process. They flip the switch when they sign you to play. It goes out to the radio stations. It goes out to all the calendars. They put posters in the window. They do 25 things that the club should be doing to cover the base. I think the problem often, again, much longer conversation, the problem is that when it comes to marketing, people are looking for like one thing that guaranteed works.
Magic bullets.
Yeah, magic bullets. Like, I made a Facebook, event, and 300 people said they were coming. Where were they? Right?
Where are they?
Yeah. And marketing is constant methodology. And you're right, testing and,
failing. Testing and failing.
Yeah, and adjusting when you have multiple, gig scenarios, 2 gigs in the same town in the same week. What do you do? Gigs in 2 different locations in the same week. What do you do?
Right.
But social media can definitely create marketing fatigue, and you think you've done this stuff, and then you ask yourself why that didn't work.
Right. You may never get that answer. There's the age-old adage, which I think is probably why that word exists. If there's some etymology there, but anyway, that says, people say, I know that 50% of my marketing works. I just wish I knew which 50%.
Sure. Yeah.
And you don't get to know, even in today's world where there's so much data. I can tell you most of the data is, I don't want to say it's BS, but it is not as exact as you are led to believe. There are trends that are charted, and patterns are interpreted and interpolated from that. There's no way to truly know what changed someone's mind. Even if you ask them, why did you get off the couch and come to the gig? The answer they give you might not be, let's assume that it's the truth in the moment. But 4 hours before or 4 days before when they made that decision, it might not have been exactly what they're telling you. There's just no way to know. And so you have to fail in order to succeed at this.
Yeah, marketing is hard, and
it is,
and it's often it's often counterintuitive. You can probably make a safe assumption that if the people like to come see you are on some platform or read some magazine or it was funny. I was at a stop sign the other day and there was a post and some band was tacking up flyers to their. I didn't even think that was done anymore, right? But
oh no, we like around here it happens all the time.
Yep.
Yep.
And again, you're making some assumption that 25,000 people go past that post. I only need 20 of them to at least react to this in some way and tell a friend. Like that's marketing, right? Like where are the people at and how do I say something meaningful to them? But that was my point to Mike's post. It's like we now have Facebook and we have 50,000 bands and band members blasting constantly. This is going to be the greatest thing ever, and
it can't be. They can't all be the greatest thing ever.
That's right. Yeah. So marketing is hard. And again, Mike's band is like great at it. And and again, I would like the next time you talk to Mike, I'm sure he'll bring this up. Like his perspective was don't expect the venue to save your butt. Take care of your own business. I think that's where he was coming from. And but the best situations are where both are involved in it.
Yeah. Yes.
And you're good at your part of it. The band is good at their part of it.
That's the thing. You can't just if all you're doing is checking the boxes and punching the ticket and whatever other catchphrases you want to use. That's not enough. You have to, and this goes back to what Tori was saying on the show is if you aren't good at this, fail and learn until you are.
Yeah.
Or take a class or hire someone who is like there are ways to get good at marketing. And there are people out there, the Mike Schultes of the world, the Tori Smiths of the world, the Bruce Bennetts of the world, right? Like all of these guys are out there marketing their bands with great success using all the tools, social media certainly being one of them, but not the only one. If putting up flyers for that particular club works and the club tells you put up flyers, put up the freaking flyers. Like if somebody knows something works and tells you it, why would you disagree with them?
Yeah.
So
I get it.
I have one more thing that has kind of surprised me as of late is that I'm starting to learn to understand Bob Dylan. And I know you and I have had this conversation over the years. I am playing on Wednesday night. I'm playing a Bob Dylan celebration tribute night. The Seacoast Rep Theater where I've played for years and years. We did all those madhouses. There has been yet another regime change there, as there seems to be every 10 years. There's some big flare up, and there was Dave bang drum. It's all fine. And so the out with the old, in with the new. Well, it remains to be seen if Roger Daltrey was right. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But it doesn't matter. Like I go and I play the drums. I enjoy all the people I make art with, and it's all fine. But the new plan includes these tribute nights where we pick an artist or a genre and go deep on it and present it for a night. And we did a Queen and David Bowie thing. We actually did an Alanis Morissette thing. The night before Thanksgiving, we did an all Beatles night. Wow. Man, it was so good. And then right at the beginning of January, we did a Led Zeppelin. Actually, we did 3 performances of it over the course of a weekend. And it was phenomenal. Like it was the band really leveled up. Our guitar player knew this Zeppelin stuff cold. And we got about 3 songs into the first rehearsal and we were like, okay, wait. The rest of us want to level up. So can we spend the rest of this rehearsal learning how we would like to approach the first rehearsal, which we'll have next week? We had it and it worked out. It was really good. And next week we're doing a Bob Dylan one. And I have never been a fan of Bob Dylan singing his own songs. Certainly, he deserves all the credit and success that he's had and all of those things because so much of today's music couldn't exist without Bob Dylan at its core. Like, I know you know of this guy, Bruce Springsteen. I don't think Springsteen exists without Dylan before him, at least not in the way that he is. Like, I mean, I think Dylan was a huge influence on Springsteen. So, to prep for this gig, though, I've had to listen to Bob Dylan sing his own songs and then other people's arrangements of them. And what I've come to appreciate about Dylan, I still don't like having to listen to him sing his own songs, but that's okay. What I've come to appreciate about Dylan is he really was like a song craftsman in terms of the stories and the lyrics. I mean, he's a folk singer, right? And I listen to some of his songs and it's like, oh, I know exactly where he's going with this. That's brilliant. And then he goes there and you still think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Truly amazing. And timeless with so many of his things. Like they're just as relevant today as they were when he wrote them. But he was terrible. To say he was terrible at this is wrong. He never even tried to be a good song arranger. It was not important to him. He would just and this is my opinion, he would just here's the song. It can be the same chords over and over again. Doesn't need a chorus. That's fine. I'm going to tell the story. And 18 verses later, I will stop. And that's it. And a great example of this to me was listening to My Back Pages. I'd only really ever heard the 30th anniversary Roger McGuinn arranged version of it. And we played that in the All-Star Band.
So good.
And it's so good. I listened to Bob's first version of My Back Pages. It's two different songs.
Yeah.
It's like, in my opinion, terrible. Because it's not terrible. It's unfinished is sort of how I see those. But I'm coming at this from a band guy perspective, not a folk singer songwriter perspective, where it's like I've said what I needed to say and now I'm done. I get why he thinks they were done, and I also get why so many of the versions of Dylan songs that we know and love were then taken and arranged by, Roger McGuinn or Jimi Hendrix or, the Rolling Stones or over and over and over again. So I don't know. I just wanted to tell you that because I know you and I'd had this conversation over the years.
Yeah. And I get it. My wife is the same way. She says, God, these are amazing songs, but why does he have to sing them? And from folk, which kind of begot the singer-songwriter genre, which I love, is all about the artist telling his story in his voice. That's it. Super meaningful to me. Some of them have great voices. Some have awful. Many of them have average voices.
Right.
They basically, can talk their way through a song. But I do think when you think about Dylan, maybe the most covered artist in history. You think? Fair?
Oh, certainly. I hadn't thought about it from that standpoint, but he's got to be top 5, if not top 1. Yeah.
So grokking Dylan immediately puts everybody's versions of what they've done with his songs in your mind. I mean, it's part of But however, if you were Newport Folk Festival in the mid-60s.
Not so much.
You would be like, oh, this is the gospel coming down to me. What a unique voice. What a unique, So understanding Dylan or any artist that has this long run in history, you are getting the artist, his original intent, and all the interpretations about it. And that's what's fun. And it's awesome that you're doing those tribute nights. I think they're great. I mean, I think the House Rockers play quite a bit. And luckily, we've gotten pretty good at dispersing geographically where we go, and we can play a similar show night to night. Some people follow us, show to show.
Sure.
But I think the idea of doing a tribute show or an album side show is a really interesting thing for successful cover bands to do, to just do something different. Give your audience something. And it kind of, like you said, exactly what you said about the Zeppelin thing, it gives your band kind of a target to grow through something together, which I think is a really, really cool thing.
I agree. Yes. Yeah. No, and in fact, it was weird. I did not have anything to do with it, but right about the same time we were prepping for the Beatles night at the Rep with that band, Casual Gravity was playing their Halloween show, our Halloween show.
Yeah.
And they like to don a musical costume for the night. And the Beatles were picked. We actually, we dressed in Sgt. Pepper costumes and learned and played, about 8 different Beatles songs that weren't in the set list before. And it was great. It was like, I swear I didn't arrange any of this. It's not my fault. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, tribute nights or celebration nights, like you said, an album side, something. When we were talking with Pat Guadagno, he stays away from the word tribute, even though it gets used in those circles. The celebration, it fits better in the vibe of what we're talking about, what you and I are talking about. So maybe whenever you're back next, whenever it works, we'll have that conversation among all the others. Yeah, man.
Yeah, love to.
Thank you for doing this, Paul. It's been a pleasure, man. I have to go have surgery now. I have to go get another lipoma out that's been driving me crazy. That's fine. They're pretty easy to get out. It'll take about 20 minutes. We have spent far more time here than I will spend there. So, but I do need to go.
All right, man.
You know, Paul, there's 3 words we say at the end of every episode. I'm not going to put them on the screen for you.
Always be performing.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Paul.
Take care, bud.